Hey there YouTube, welcome to the Francis Micro Homestead. This is how we warm our house during the winter. 2.5 years ago when we were looking at this home to purchase, we saw a big flaw with the utilities in that there was no gas. It was only electric. So with it being electric, we were thinking about the different appliances, the furnace, the stove, the water heater, all are electric. So in the winter, if we were to run the furnace for the whole season, we're looking at $500 to $600 a month to run it. We were excited to see this stove was available for use when we purchased the home, so we got excited and put it on our list to be able to prep to get the firewood for the upcoming winter season. We had a lot to do when we first moved in, and firewood was on the list, but we didn't get to it until the fall. We called around and we tried to find the cheapest firewood that we could, and firewood is not cheap, it's expensive, but we did find one that was reasonably priced and they were able to deliver it to our home. But again, we weren't prepared for firewood, so it ended up being piled up in our backyard for the winter, and that winter ended up being one of the worst winters that we've seen. So it was a learning experience for us. But in the spring, we got to it and went out and built ourselves a nice firewood shed. It's a basic lean-to that consists of just 2x4s. The siding is some wood that was left on the property when we first moved in, and the roof is leftovers from when we built the shop. It holds about 5.5 cords of firewood, which seems to be the amount that we burn during the winter. So this is located in our main living area, and it does a fairly good job of heating the home. When we first started, the air return was in a bad location and wasn't pulling in that hot air from the stove. I ended up moving our air return into the hallway high in the wall that pulls in all this warm air and circulates it through the house. So one of the tasks that I did when we first moved in was put in a smart thermostat, which is great. I have it set so that the fan's kicked on for about 30 minutes per hour, and it kicks on for 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off, and does that throughout the whole day. When I get this piping hot, I turn that fan on indefinitely. That circulates all that hot air throughout the house. Our bedrooms average around 69 degrees, which in my opinion is the perfect temperature to sleep in. When we need to get firewood from the firewood shed, we hook a wagon up to the ATV, we fill it up, and we dump it right by our mudroom door. When it takes about 3 wagon loads to be able to fill up the 2 carts, but we prop open the mudroom door and we fill up both carts. We don't fear any heat being lost from our home while we fill up the firewood because we fill it up in the mudroom. And these racks will hold 2 to 3 days worth of firewood each. So some of the things that we've added to this stove when we first moved in is the flue. We've added the flue to the chimney stack to help keep the heat into our home. Currently what it does is it burns hot, and all that hot smoke and gases shoots up into the chimney and out the top. When we close the flue, it circulates that heat in and slowly releases that heat out. When you have a flue like this, you want to make sure that your stove is piping hot, as if you close the flue, it will snuff out the fire if you do. Another thing that we've added is the fan. This fan is a non-electric fan. It actually runs off of the heat of the stove, and as it heats up, it will start to generate a current, which then transfers into a motor that blows the hot air into the main living space. And the last thing that we've added is a magnetic thermometer to visually see the temperature and see how hot the stove actually gets. So our daily routine is when I start the fire for the evening, I open it up and I get out all the ash. The big pieces of charcoal and embers, if there's any, I leave in the stove for that evening's fire, but I clean out all the fine ash and stuff. Once a week I clean the glass. It's not a necessity, but it's nice to be able to look at the fire and enjoy the fire a little bit more without having to look through soot and ash. Once all the ash is out of the stove, I spread out the remainder charcoal and embers, and then I add kindling and paper. This makes it just easier to start and gets that stove hot. What we want is a fast hot fire when we first start it to get the stove nice and hot so that it can take heavier woods. So once that kindling starts, I add bigger pieces of light wood until we get a nice hot fire. Once that fire is hot and there's a decent amount of coals, then we can start adding those heavier woods that ends up heating the house. In the evenings, we get the fire super hot, and when we're ready for bed, we let the fire die down a little bit, leaving those hot coals, and then we add as much heavy wood as we possibly can. Then we close the flue, and we close the air intake, and let it burn through the night. Some cold nights, we will get below freezing temperatures, and we'll stay in bed. At that point, the house does get a little bit chilly, but we turn our thermostat on so that when it gets that cold, the electric furnace will kick on and keep us comfortable until we can come out and tend to the fire. And in the mornings, I just spread out those hot embers and hot coals, add more kindling in there and get it nice and hot again, and burn it to about mid-morning. And after that, I let it cool, and then I repeat the cycle. So that's how we heat our home for the winter. It's not perfect, and there's still a lot of things that we need to work out. What I would love to do next year is to be able to get my own firewood. It's a little bit daunting and unknown to me, as I'm not sure where to start or where to get the firewood, but it's going to be an adventure for me. And I do appreciate you joining us today. And if you like what you see, or if you have any questions, leave a comment. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have or respond to any of your comments. And thanks again for watching.